Talk just for a few minutes, Mr. President, about digital assets. Some people refer to them as crypto or cryptocurrency. The Senate Banking Committee is in the process, as we should be, of considering market structure legislation for digital assets, for Bitcoin, for crypto. And it's important because there's an enormous amount of confusion out there. I remember when blockchain technology started, many of us do. Today, 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency. Its growth has been nothing short of breathtaking. But as oftentimes happens when you have an innovation, it creates enormous confusion on the way that the subject of that innovation integrates with the federal government. And that's the case here. Those who are in the cryptocurrency business and in the blockchain technology business don't know who to talk to in the federal government. The Securities and Exchange Commission has announced under President Biden that it has jurisdiction over digital assets, and so did the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC. And there's been a lot of litigation, and there have been a lot of court cases, and it's been enormously confusing. And those in the crypto business understandably have the reaction, look, we don't mind being regulated, we have nothing to hide, but we'd like to know who to talk to. Is it the CFTC? Is it the SEC? What do we do? And that's why we need legislation. That's why we need market structure legislation, not because government needs to stick its nose in everything, but because there has to be some certainty here. Clearly, there's a turf war between the CFTC and the SEC, and it's Congress's role to delineate who has jurisdiction over what. Now, we did pass one piece of what you might call crypto legislation. We passed the Genius Act, as you know, Mr. President. That was an important piece of legislation, but it really was just a baby step. It regulates stable coins, which is only one part of the digital assets business. I'm certainly not denigrating the effort. I voted for the bill. I sit on the banking committee. The Congress passed the bill. It's a good bill. It was necessary. I congratulate everybody who worked so hard on it. But it's only a small portion of the digital assets market. Now we need to turn to the rest. And the House has already acted. The House has passed a bill called the Clarity Act, which does just what I've been talking about, providing some market structure legislation for the crypto industry, the digital assets industry. But the Senate, this is above my pay grade, but the Senate has decided not to take up the Clarity Act. I don't know that it's been decided definitively, because obviously if enough senators want to, we can take up anything we want to take up. But the thinking seems to be that the Senate needs to start over and draft our own digital assets market structure bill that complements the Clarity Act, which is already passed by the House. The Banking Committee, chaired by our very able Chairman Tim Scott, is going to be taking up this legislation soon. It's got to be written first. It's still being written. We need to hold hearings. This is a complicated piece of legislation. I've spent a lot of time on it, and it's one of the most complicated pieces of legislation I've ever seen. This is just one person's opinion. as a member of banking, I think it's going to take at least 2 hearings for us to be able to understand the pros and the cons of this legislation and understand the legislation itself. We have to be sure in this legislation, given that 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency, we have to make sure in this legislation, Mr. President, that we're striking the right balance in jurisdiction between the CFTC and the SEC. We have to make sure in this legislation that we're coordinating closely with another Senate committee, the Senate Agriculture Committee, because it has jurisdiction of the CFTC and will play just as important, if not a more important role in this legislation as the Banking Committee. We're going to have to address in this legislation some concerns of the banking community. The banking community, after we passed the Genius Act, remember the Genius Act was just about stable coins. The banking committee is arguing the banking community, our banks, are arguing very persuasively that there were some mistakes made in the Genius Act, which, as I just said, regulates stable coins. Frankly, I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's what we need a hearing for, but I think the banking community needs to be heard on this issue. If we did make some mistakes, I'm sorry, Mr. President. If we did make some mistakes in the Genius Act with respect to American banks, I want us to correct it. I'm not saying we did or we didn't. I've heard both sides of the argument. But my point is that we're going to have to take up that issue as well in the hearing, because the banking community would like us to amend the larger digital asset market structure legislation to accommodate their concerns about the mistakes, if any, that we made in the Genius Act. We're going to have to spend a lot of time in these hearings and in drafting the legislation, making sure that we are addressing things like tokenized securities. This complicated stuff. It's a way, basically, to trade a stock using blockchain technology without owning the stock. We've got to make sure we get that right. An issue will be raised, I'm sure, about deposit insurance. Cryptocurrency is, it's currency in the eyes of many people. And I can see the day when the American people will ask us to address the issue. Should deposit insurance cover cryptocurrency and digital assets? I'm not suggesting to you that it should. I'm not suggesting to you, Mr. President, that it shouldn't. I'm suggesting to you that likely would be a topic we'd want to consider in one of these hearings that we need to have about this topic. I also think it would be appropriate in a hearing on this topic before we draft or vote on the legislation to talk about the Clarity Act. That's the digital market structure legislation that I just referred to that was passed by the House. No one's suggesting this, but I certainly would disagree if they suggested that we just ignore that legislation. A lot of work went into it. I spent a lot of time reading it, and I'm going to have to spend more time reading it. It's very interesting, but there's some good work there. And I want to be able to compare the Clarity Act passed by the House with the Senate's market structure legislation. So perhaps we can pick the best of each. And that would be an appropriate topic of a hearing as well. And these issues I'm addressing are illustrative. They're not exhaustive. But we also need to address the issue of what, if any, fiduciary responsibility those who participate in the digital assets markets have. I'm talking about commodity brokers. I'm talking digital commodity brokers. I'm talking about digital commodity dealers. Should they have a fiduciary obligation to their customers, to their clients? I'm talking about the digital commodity exchanges. What should their duty to their clients be? Should it be a fiduciary obligation? Should it be something less? These are weighty issues. These are important issues. These are not issues that you raise and solve over a weekend. But I wanted to start talking about this bill, Mr. President, because it's one of the most important pieces of legislation that this body will consider. It may not be the sexiest, and may not be the most interesting to some, but it's when 1 in 5 Americans own cryptocurrency, it's certainly important. So I'll probably be talking about this issue several more times on this floor, but as the Senate moves forward with our digital assets market structure legislation, I hope we'll move it quickly, but I hope we'll move deliberately. I hope we'll take the time to hold the hearings, and again, I think it's going to take more than one hearing to address these weighty topics, and then an additional time once we get a bill to mark it up, as we say, to amend it and make sure that we do the job for the American people. And with that, Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Senator John Kennedy took to the Senate floor to emphasize the urgent need for clear, comprehensive legislation governing digital assets, often referred to as cryptocurrency. He began by noting the rapid growth of the industry, pointing out that 1 in 5 Americans now own some form of cryptocurrency. This expansion, he explained, has created both opportunities and significant regulatory confusion. Kennedy highlighted that both the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, have claimed jurisdiction over digital assets. This overlapping authority has left businesses uncertain about which agency to engage with. He made it clear that most companies in the crypto space are not opposed to regulation, they simply want clarity and consistency. He referenced the passage of the Genius Act, which established regulations for stablecoins, as an important but limited first step. Stablecoins are only one part of the broader digital assets landscape, and much more needs to be addressed. The House of Representatives has already passed the Clarity Act to create a more structured regulatory framework, but the Senate has yet to take it up. Kennedy explained that the Senate appears inclined to draft its own version of digital asset legislation, with the Banking Committee expected to lead the effort. Kennedy noted that this process will be complex, requiring multiple hearings and coordination between committees, particularly with the Agriculture Committee, which oversees the CFTC. He identified several key issues that lawmakers will need to address: the treatment of tokenized securities, questions about deposit insurance for cryptocurrency, and whether digital asset brokers and exchanges should have fiduciary responsibilities to their customers. He also acknowledged concerns from the banking industry regarding potential shortcomings in the Genius Act, suggesting that these issues may need to be revisited in future legislation. Kennedy stressed that crafting digital asset market structure legislation will not be simple or quick. Given the widespread ownership of cryptocurrency among Americans, he urged his colleagues to move forward both efficiently and deliberately. The senator emphasized that while the topic may not be the most glamorous, it is one of the most important pieces of legislation Congress will face in the coming months.